Welcome to Session 8 of Sacred Communication. Our prayer for you is that over the last several weeks, you've grown in discipleship, evangelism, and community. So grab your group journal and get ready as Pastor Taylor ends our sessions of Sacred Communication.
Well, hey, and welcome to Session 8 of Sacred Communication. And this is our final week of walking through these topics on this idea and this discussion around prayer. And if you've been with us over the past 8 weeks, I just want to say thank you so much for making the commitment and the investment to be a part of all of these previous sessions. And tonight, what we're going to be talking about is Session 8, this prayer of send me. And this session, as well as the previous two sessions, we've been walking through this book of Dangerous Prayers by Craig Rochelle. And if you haven't got a copy of it, I would strongly encourage you to pick one up and to read it and follow along with us through this topic. But the three dangerous prayers that he challenges us in are search me, break me, and the last one, what we're talking about tonight, is send me. And really the thrust of this prayer, send me, comes down to this question of what if instead of asking God to do something on my behalf, we dared to ask God to use us to do something on his behalf? And this is where I want to challenge myself tonight and challenge you, is instead of coming to God through prayer and asking God to do something on our behalf, that we would begin to look at this prayer of send me and question, are we willing to ask God to use us to do something for him on his behalf? And so our application point just right from the get-go tonight is that God is sending me to a place unknown beyond my comfort. God is sending me to a place unknown beyond my comfort. And I've seen this so true in my life. And as I was reflecting this, I was thinking of all the things that I've walked through in my life that were uncomfortable. And the thing about uncomfortable situations is we don't usually insert ourselves into them willingly. And I was thinking, and I had a hard time coming up with something to share. And as I remembered what I'm about to share, I realized, man, this is probably just so uncomfortable that I blocked it from my memory. And some of you guys, as I begin to say what I'm about to say, you're gonna think, man, Taylor, you're the worst husband ever. And you might be right. I was reflecting back. So my wife and I, we have two baby girls now, and in fact, we're taking care of a third one as I'm talking tonight. But 3 girls under 3 years old, and it's crazy to think that 3 years ago I had no girls and no kids whatsoever. It's just me and Lindsay, and we found out we were pregnant. We actually moved over to here in Kelso when we were 8 months pregnant. And Lindsay began talking about the birth and the plan for the birth, and she wanted to do a home birth with a midwife, and there were plenty of uncomfortable conversations of all the things revolving around the birth. But and this is where you're gonna think, man, you're so terrible. But I was not comfortable with the idea of the birth. Like, I'm all about let's have a baby. Like, I want to hold the baby in my hands. At the time, we didn't know if we were having a boy or a girl. We were waiting to find out. And but Lindsay began communicating to me that she wanted me involved in the process of being there and being in the birth. And to be honest, at this point in my life, I didn't even think I was comfortable to be in the room while the birth was happening. Something about it's gross. It's I don't want to get too graphic, but I was just like, it doesn't sound like something I want to do. And obviously, Lindsay, she says, I want you to be there. You need to be there. If we want to stay married, you need to be there. She didn't say that, but it sure felt that way, right? And I was so uncomfortable. And what we did is we had a home birth, which, reflecting on this now, man, there's no other way I would have done it. But this is our first experience walking through pregnancy, delivering a baby. And I can't get into all of the details because at the end of this, it's going to be published on the internet. And I prefer to stay married to my wife, so I can't share everything. But walking through the labor and the birth, all the way down to stepping into the pool and receiving Sienna on the other end, was one of, honestly, the most uncomfortable experiences I've ever had in my life. Now, would I change it for anything? Absolutely not. Like the gift received on the other side was well worth it, and it's an experience, trust me, I'll never forget. But so much of it was uncomfortable. And even down to the cutting of the umbilical cord, they asked me, hey, do you want to cut the cord? And I said, not me. I don't. It's slimy. It looks weird. I don't want to touch it. And so I did not cut the umbilical cord. And I know that some of you dads are like, nah, like I hopped right in there and did it. So actually this second pregnancy we had with Sequoia, I was finally brave enough to say, okay, I'll cut the cord, because I had seen it done the previous time. But I reflect on it of being one of the most uncomfortable things that I pushed myself to do, because I knew that it was necessary for me to do. And I knew that the value on the other end of doing this was well worth it. And when it comes to prayer, this prayer of send me, the reality is that God is sending each of us to a place unknown. We don't know where that is, and oftentimes we don't see it until we're on the other side of it, but God is sending us, and the unknown makes us uncomfortable. And so God is, through sending us, pushing us beyond our comfort. And the point that I want to reflect on tonight is that sometimes, we approach this prayer and we don't want to pray it because we're scared that God is going to send us somewhere. And what I want to challenge us with tonight is that God has already sent you. You've already been sent. I have already been sent. And every day that we wake up and we live and we breathe, Jesus is calling us into our common everyday life to be sent as messengers of this good news that you and I have received. And when we think about this, a lot of us, we reflect on the Great Commission in Matthew 28, which says this, for a lot of us, this might be a common verse, but Jesus came and he told his disciples, I've been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And teach these new disciples to obey all of the commands that I've given you. And be sure of this, I am with you even to the end of the age. Many of us know that verse. Many of us think, we reflect on that verse. But I want to challenge us tonight, this idea that this Great Commission, we've been sent, that we were actually sent before the Great Commission existed in Matthew chapter 28. It actually goes all the way back to the beginning of time in Genesis chapter 12, 1 through 4, when God called Abraham, and the Lord said to Abraham, leave your native country and your relatives and your father's family and go to the land that I will show you. And as I keep reading here, I want you to pay attention to how many times God uses the word bless. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you and make you famous, and you will be a blessing to others. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who treat you with contempt. All of the families of the earth will be blessed through you. So Abraham departed as the Lord had instructed. And the last line of this verse is so critical when it says that Abraham departed as the Lord had instructed. So God sent and Abraham went. He obeyed the instruction and he followed. And it's actually through that instruction, through that obedience, that you and I are here tonight. That through Abraham became this blessing of God's plan of salvation. Not just for you, not just for me, not just for Abraham and his family, but that all of the nations of the world would be blessed through Abraham. And Jesus comes and he fulfills this plan, this great mission, and then he sends us. The Great Commission actually is co-mission, that we are actually co-conciliators of this reconciling mission that Jesus has called us to. And so in order to think through it this way, is a lot of times we're fearful of praying this prayer. Oh, I don't want to pray this prayer of send me because I'm scared that God is going to send me somewhere. And As a kid, and if you read the book, I'm thankful that it sounds like a lot of people have this fear, is I'm scared I'm gonna pray because God's gonna send me to Africa, to somewhere unknown. And the reality is God is sending all of us, and we're all sent somewhere unknown, and some of us might be sent to Africa, and some of us might be sent to another country or another town or another city. Some of us, like myself, we might be sent to Kelso, to move from the eastern land of Yakima and move over to Kelso. But God is sending us, and the reality is that most of the time our fear that keeps us from praying this prayer is just not a relevant fear. Many times God is sending us right into the moments we already experience. And in fact, if we look at Jesus's ministry, some of the most powerful moments of Jesus's ministry were responses to everyday interruptions that were not planned opportunities. And if you read through the Gospels, you can look at this, that none of these, even for Jesus, were comfortable. Oftentimes responses to interruptions. We see Zacchaeus finds him up in a tree as he's passing through the crowd. See the woman who jumped out to grab his garment. We see a hungry crowd of people, and all of these miracles that we read about are the majority of the times interruptions to what Jesus was already on his way to go and do. And I think in this prayer of send me, some of us, we can't put it past the will of God that he might be calling us to be sent beyond our ordinary everyday life. But for the majority of us, God is sending us right where we already exist and reside. But in that, it may not always come with the promise of comfort. Being sent can be uncomfortable. And so my question to us is, as we look at this blessing with Abraham, this promise to Abraham, do we also wake up every day knowing that God is sending me, God is sending you to be a blessing to the people that we rub shoulders with every single day? And I heard this before, and it's always stuck with me, is that delayed obedience is disobedience. Delayed obedience is disobedience. Sometimes, we think if we put off what God has asked us to do, maybe because we're waiting for it to fit into our schedule or the fabric of our life, or we're waiting for the thing that Jesus is asking us to do to be of comfort to us, or in a time that's convenient for us, when it fits my needs, then Jesus, I'll be willing to do it. But delayed obedience is actually disobedience. And I think of a story in my life of my junior year of high school. My family was in the middle of a transition of a move, and I really wanted to just do online schooling so I could fly through it. I could do it on my own, and then I could move on with, at the time, what I wanted to be doing, which was audio engineering. And my mom said, "Hey, Taylor, you're gonna go to school because the kids at your school need you more than you need to be there. They need you, and they need the hope that you have in Jesus, and so you're going to public school." And I hated that response from my parents. I didn't want to do it, but in my heart, I knew my mom was right. And so finally, I kind of wrapped around to this idea. And if you're a Christian kid that grew up in youth group, you know that every fall the youth pastor does this rally thing, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna go save your school for Jesus." And so I bought into it. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go meet a whole bunch of popular kids and win them over." And man, my plan was not God's plan. And I remember this kid at the time. His name was Tegan. And Tegan was so annoying. Like, I don't know if you ever have that person in your life that you just wish would go away. And I know it sounds bad, like this is not like the shining moment for me in my life. But I literally prayed, "God, would you tell this person to go away from me?" We shared plenty of classes together, and he was messing up my plan because Tegan was not the popular kid in school. He wasn't the person everyone wanted to be around. In fact, a lot of people didn't want to be around him. And he kept hanging out with me, kept talking to me, and so I would pray, "God, like, send him away." And finally, God just convicted me and said, "Why don't you invest in his life? Why don't you take the time to care about him and to learn who he is, to hear who he is, to hear his heart? And long story short, I invited him to youth group with me, and he started coming week in and week out. And after a while, this friendship formed, and Tegan to this day is the reason that I found my way and found this opportunity to enter into this calling that God had placed on my life to be doing ministry. And the crazy thing is, this was all the way back in high school. Just about a year ago, Tegan reached out to me, and it was actually in the middle of a church service a Sunday morning here at KCA, and I got a message from him, and he said, "Hey, you were there the day that I was baptized." He said, "Do you have a picture of that?" Because he said, "I lost mine, and I was hoping to get a copy of that." And I texted him back, and I said, "This is the craziest thing that you would message me," because I said, and we haven't talked in years, I said, I was going through some of my old stuff the other day, and I found this photo of you being baptized. And so I pulled it out, and I was able to send it to him and get him a copy, but I have kept this photo in my office for the last year. And I keep it up on my wall, and I look at it because it reminds me of this mission that Jesus is calling me to, and the idea that God is sending me. And sometimes when we're sent, it does something on the inside of us when we respond in obedience. And even in my situation where, it may have been a reluctant obedience, there was a blessing, there was a follow through on God's part on the other side of my obedience to that. And I wonder, man, how many opportunities, how many breakthroughs in our life or in the lives of others are being missed out on because we've delayed obedience, because we're not willing to be sent. And the question isn't, are you being sent? You have been sent. The question is, will you be sent? Will you go? Will you do what Jesus has already asked you to do? And I want to have the heart of the prophet Isaiah. I was reflecting on this verse, Isaiah 6:8, and this is printed in your journal, Isaiah 6:8. It says, "Then I heard the Lord asking, whom should I send as a messenger to the people? Who will go for us? I said, here I am, send me." Man, that's what I want from my life. That's the heart and the posture and the attitude that I want to wake up with, is God, here I am. Would you send me to do your work? And if I'm honest, this is not the way that I live every day of my life. But I look back on the times that I have done this, and I've partnered with God in what he's doing, and I've walked in obedience, and when he's said to go, I've gone, and when he said to do, I'll do. And in those moments and the reward on the other side of that, I've gone, man, why don't I live like that more often? And the reality is that I'm being sent. You are being sent every single day. And so God is sending me. He's sending us to a place unknown that's beyond our comfort. And this question we started with tonight is, what if instead of asking God to do something on my behalf, I prayed this dangerous prayer of, God, would you send me? God, would you use me to do something on your behalf? And as we wrap up the discussion tonight, I want to challenge you a bit further in this. If you're serious about praying the prayer of send me, and this is an application that you really want to live out in your day-to-day, that you would allow God to send you, and you would be obedient to that call upon your life to be sent to the day-to-day, recognize that I am sent to be a blessing to those that I encounter every single day, then I'd encourage you to pick up a copy of this book called Jesus at the Door. It's a new book by a really good friend, actually, Scott McNamara. Some of you guys have been in the sessions with him, as he's invested a lot into our church and our leadership and our conversations here at KCA. But he's not too far away, right from Woodland. But this is a man that does what we're talking about. And his book, Jesus at the Door, I'm going to challenge you, don't read it, don't pick it up, don't buy it unless you're willing to be challenged in your thought process and you're willing to be convicted a little bit, because in these conversations I've had with him and in opening up this book, it challenges me to remove the excuses that hold me back from doing the very thing that God is asking you and I to do. That God is not asking us to be sent. He's telling us, no, you've been sent. And so would we partner in that prayer? Would we partner with the work that Jesus wants to do through us and say, God, here I am, send me. And so as we close tonight, let me pray for you. And I want to challenge those of you that are going to make this decision to pray this prayer. It's not easy. It's not comfortable. It's a dangerous prayer, but it's one of reward on the other side of what God wants to do in and through your life. So God, we lift you up tonight and we thank you for this series of sacred communication, the things that you've challenged us in over these past 8 weeks of discovering what prayer is, this gift of sacred communication to us. And as we've, over the last few weeks, talked about these 3 dangerous prayers, tonight, God, I pray that you would give us the courage, give us the boldness to want to pray these prayers, to desire to pray this prayer of God, would you send me? Would you send me to the places that are sometimes uncomfortable? Would you send me to a place beyond my own comfort, beyond my own desires, so that I can do the work that you've called me to, so that I can be your servant, so that I can bless others because it's what you've done for me. And God, you're sending me. And so would I accept that call? And God, would I partner with you through prayer to be sent, to be open and ready to respond to the people that you've put in my life every single day. God, would you send me into those places uncomfortable? Challenge me to live out this prayer that I pray. And God, I just pray over these groups tonight. Would you bless this time of discussion that we have together? And I just thank you for what you're doing through your church and through these groups. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you for joining us for Session 8 of Sacred Communication. Our prayer for you is that over the last several weeks, you've grown in community, discipleship, and evangelism. At this time, we'd love for you to get with your group leader and start going over the discussion questions. After the discussion questions, we'd love for you to spend some time in prayer. Our prayer focus for this week is send me, and we find that in Romans 10:15. And it says this, how beautiful are the feet of messengers who bring good news. We hope that you have a wonderful time in discussion and cannot wait until we launch groups again in the summer.